Thank you everyone for tuning in to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, and today we have a special guest, Dr. Logan Sherman. He is a doctor of chiropractic. Logan, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. You told me not to say doctor, but I still did.
Yeah, yeah. I'll let it slide this once.
I appreciate it. Look, you've been in the Dallas Metroplex for a really long time, and you've been doing a lot of running and things like you've run marathons, half marathons, and as a matter of fact, I was looking at your bio, and I'm quite impressed. You've run, and I know that you're the chairman of the board on the Dallas Marathon, right?
Yes, sir.
It completely gets me off when you say sir, but but you've also won the Dallas Marathon, and I remember when you did that. I think that was 2015, is that right?
Yes, right.
And you've won several others, but how'd you get into running? What was your motivation back in the day?
I was born here in Dallas, and my dad was a really big runner. His dad, my grandfather, had died of a cardiac incident, and
Hmm.
so my father was just huge into fitness, and my mother, um, obviously raised the three of us. I've got two older sisters here in Dallas, and really throughout my journey of being a child and kind of going through a divorce of parents and things
Yeah.
like that, I actually was a little overweight, and so
Hmm.
I was picked on in elementary school and middle school. And in fact, one of my best friends, his nickname for me was Jelly Roll. And so I was a big
Yeah.
kid, but I loved to
Yep.
run. You put me out there, and I kind of had a passion for it. I just didn't really have a way to express myself in those early years besides
Yeah.
a few small races. And I really wanted at a particular time in my life, I wanted to kind of bond with my dad. And really through that it was running. And that was
Hmm.
his real big thing. That was a kind of a way to get to his level. And he got me into several different sports. I played soccer. I wasn't really good at soccer. I played hockey, which was one thing that I really played a long time. Got me into baseball,
Was this
but
in
it
high
was
school
really
or middle school or?
this was really elementary up
Okay.
into high school, and I still hold a record at my middle school in football. I played the 0 hour. I was the third string 0 hour, so like the bench warmer basically. And coach put me in, and I had the opportunity. I was playing safety, which don't know a lot about football. I love it, but I had the perfect opportunity to pick a pass. Ball was thrown right to me into
Nice.
my hands, and I dropped it. So I go down in the middle school record. Our dream football player, the quarterback, is like that's my contribution to the middle school. But
Dropping a pass,
yeah,
potential interception.
um, I didn't really have the outlet for running, and really until we got a little bit more into middle school. And so one time during
Hmm.
PE in middle school, I had enjoyed running. I was still a bigger kid. The PE teacher, I got in trouble. I got in trouble for talking during class. And so
Yeah.
Coach Holliday, he was a very memorable person in my life. He said, Sherman, he said, I'm either going to give you a detention or next class period, you got to run 2 miles. I'm like, shoot, I don't know. I don't know if I can run 2 miles during class period, but I'd rather run 2 miles than my dad find out that I got a detention for talking during class. And lo and behold, the next class period came about, and I was mad, and I didn't want to get in trouble. And I just was so competitive that I ran the 2 miles pretty quick. And I actually think I went a little bit further. Coach Holliday, without telling me, calls my dad and he goes, Dr. Sherman, my dad, I think your son's going to be a runner. He got in trouble for talking too much, and I made him run 2 miles during class, and he ran it fast. So that's like my joke about how running started. I actually, yeah, I got in trouble, and so that was my punishment. And I have a lot to owe Coach Holliday, but
Just
he
for
got
making you
me
run two
in,
miles. That's great.
and I still remember the track. It's right in my neighborhood now. He pushed and moved me towards running. Coach Holliday, he saw it. My dad really wanted it. My dad connected me with Terry Jessup, who was a really big member of my life. He was my club cross country coach, track and cross country coach, all the way from middle of middle school all the way through when I won Dallas. Just really instrumental in my early years of running. And there's so much thought process about running and building a training program and
Hmm.
how to properly train that I learned from Terry Jessup. And so I owe him a lot. One of Terry's favorite things to say is the first time he met me at his camp, he looked at me and he was like, I think he turned to his wife. He said, what am I supposed to do with this fat little kid? But just, I wasn't athletic. I wasn't his norm. He was used to the top of the top athletes, and I was overweight, but I had a strong work ethic. And so he would say, hey, I want you to run 6 or 10 miles. Most of the time I'd run 12. And just
Wow. Super
always
competitive.
anything I could do to please Terry was a huge objective of mine.
Hmm.
And so Terry wrote my training program and really made me understand how to build a proper training program. And Terry, if people know running, there's several different people out there that wrote Rite programs, but he was very
Yeah.
big on the Lydiard system. And Arthur Lydiard was really big in the 80s, 70s, 80s. And so Terry actually had a great relationship with him in person. And so Terry
Wow.
brought a lot of that high mileage, high volume, high intensity training. And so I fed off of it. And I knew from the beginning that I wanted to do long distance running, and that the longer it got, the more I liked to hurt, the more I liked to dig deep, the more I liked to reflect. And through my dad, through Terry, I met a lot of people who had been involved, who had won Dallas Marathon. And I knew this was this backyard marathon. I got a little bit more interested into it. And so about my freshman year of high school, I was still doing hockey and I was running, I think I was in eighth grade. So I was in the middle school, but I was running with the high school kids.
Did you
Got
get pretty
invited.
fast then? Did you lose a little bit of weight by then or not? Not yet.
I started losing weight really with Terry's program with mileage. And
All those miles, it makes sense.
coincidentally, a lot of things in my life changed. I had a big lack of focus. I was acting out in class, as you heard earlier,
Mm.
talking and trying to be funny, and so I went from pretty poor grades to basically straight A's for a little bit. And it was really the only identifiable thing was running. And I focused a lot of my attention and energy into it. And then, as Terry would tell you, got in trouble with the girls. He'd be like, "Why did your workout so bad?" And I was like, "Terry, I was out
Went out
late
with this
last night."
girl.
It's always the girls, Logan. As a freshman in high school, playing hockey, I was running, wasn't quite sure which direction I wanted to go, but I was also having some heart issues. And so
Mm.
I was having
Wow.
this arrhythmia my freshman year. And so dad took me to a cardiologist and I got checked out. I got a couple things looked at for about a 6 month span. I got the echoes, I got the stress test, I got the
Yeah.
Holter monitor, I had everything, and everything was negative. Everything said, "Hey, you're fine." And so, anyways, we'll touch up on that later because ended up in college, they found the arrhythmia after about 5 years and ended up having an ablation. For most of my high school years, I dealt with that, but just didn't want to be the boy who cried wolf over this cardiac issue and the fact that
So when
I'd
you were
gone through
running,
all the
your heart
tests.
was hurting a little bit, and you just try to deal with it. And
It wasn't pain. It definitely was a little bit more of a palpation, a
mm,
palpatory thing. And so heart rate would skyrocket. And so
got it.
we had it up into kind of the low 200s at one particular
Wow.
time. And so the way I always explained it, it felt like the heart was pumping so fast, none of the tissues could get oxygen. So you get
It
a little
was.
faint and weak. And basically I never passed out, but I'd get into a part where
A little
maybe I'd
dizzy.
get down, put my head between my knees, and
Mm.
let blood flow get back to my head. But as a freshman, though, in middle school, I got brought up to run with a high school team during the during the Dallas Marathon, White Rock Dallas Marathon at the time, on the relay. And man, that was the coolest experience. Just
When you get to go
being
race like
there.
that at a place, it's really cool, and especially as a freshman, I'm sure.
Yeah, just when you're young and you just don't know, you're running on grasses or grass fields or tracks, but then
Yeah.
you're on the streets of Dallas and the big buildings and everything that Dallas does. I fell in love with it. It really made me, we talked earlier, I wanted to be a distance runner, and
Yeah.
Dallas really became the bullseye for me in those early years. I knew, hey, I wasn't going to run a marathon at 16, 17
Yeah.
years old. I knew I was going to wait a little bit, but that became some type of infatuation I had. I would go home every year, and the day after Dallas Marathon, I would go in and I'd cut out the newspaper article of the
That's
top
easy.
10 in the paper, and I'd put
Yeah.
it up in my bathroom. Years and years, I'd have all this data.
Been thinking about it for
And
a long time as a kid.
there's nothing more special to me than like a hometown marathon. And
Yeah.
gosh, when I was in a baby carriage and a stroller, my mom would push me to watch my dad finish Dallas Marathon. There's something cool about it, and I think they do a
And your
great
dad
job
ran
here
the
at Dallas.
marathon several times then.
He was a big
Or,
runner, and so he definitely wasn't a part of the first Dallas, but
mm,
he did it for I think 8 or 10 years in a row
okay.
and bounced around, did all of them. So, but definitely fell in love with A&M. I went to JJ Pierce, I fell in love with Dallas Marathon. I went to JJ Pierce all 4 years and ran and just really started pushing myself and pushing myself. And I knew I was going to run in college. I found such a passion for it. I knew that was the next step. And so as a senior in high school, one of my favorite, not my favorite stories, but one of the biggest stories was I was at the regional meet. And so you go district, regional, state. And at that particular time in 4A, there were certainly the 8 of us that were tracking to make it to state. It was the same weekend as prom. And so you go back to Terry girls, but it was the same weekend as prom. And so we went up there on a Friday night, was the 2 mile, was a 3,200. And it was a huge storm. And in fact, the race kept getting delayed and delayed. And so finally, probably about 2-3 hours of waiting, we got a call from the coach. And he said, hey, y'all just go home, go back to your house, rest up. I'm going to stay for a meeting. They're going to figure out how they're going to start running this thing in the morning. And so I go home, and on our way home, we get a call, and he says, hey, what they're going to do is they're going to pick up where they left off. And so they left off, you're going to have another hour and a half before you get to run the 2 mile. And so we go home, and I think I went out and did dinner, and we get up the next morning, and we make our way all the way up to Denton at UNT. And I'm walking into the track, and I see the competitors, the people that the race I should have been in, are all super sweaty. I'm like, what just happened? Did I miss something here? And sure enough, we find out after the fact that when my coach had left, a few coaches brought up the fact that people that were going to do exactly what I was doing and several other distance kids do. They run the 3,200 and then they come back and run the 1,600. They thought they needed a little more time between. And so they said, hey, why don't we, instead of starting where we left off, just go ahead and start with a 3,200 meter, start where we left off and give more time between the two. And so we had to do a petition to the UIL, which ended up being my first political pull and questioning of how they should have alerted anybody in the 32. They should have called coaches or done a roll call. And UIL was great. I went down there. It was like I explain it like a court style hearing where they heard our side, we heard their side, and there was some moderator in the middle that basically said, hey, we made a mistake. We're sorry. What we're going to do is we're going to do an unprecedented 9th runner in the UIL state meet. And so this exhaustion of going through this, but there was a fire lit underneath me that I was like, hey man, I want to go out there. If they're going to put me in, I got to prove myself. I went out and was fortunate enough to win and to set a state record. And that's one of my favorite stories of the time, was just the kick down and all the stuff that kind of came in, and everybody made it right on both sides. And the second place guy was phenomenal. He just couldn't have been a better sport about it. I'd probably be a little upset if you had the chance to win. If they didn't have 9 runners and they just had the 8, he would have won. But he was great, and I think all of us worked together in that race to make it so special.
I love that story. Wow. See, I bet you've never even told the story on a podcast.
I have not told that story on a podcast. Before senior year state meet cross country, I remember driving down, I was like, man, I don't feel good. And my dad was like, you're fine. I was like, I'm pretty sure I don't feel good. And somebody just brought this up the other day, which jogged my memory because I completely forget about it. But get to the hotel room in outside of Round Rock on Friday night before the Saturday state meet, and I am at like 103-degree fever.
Oh my gosh.
Never get sick before in my life. Just 103. I'm like, my bones are breaking. Like, Dad, I got to go to the hospital. Yeah. Something's not right. And looking back, it probably was a flu, but sweating, fever, chills, all that stuff. And so he ended up, I'm pretty sure I took a bunch of Tylenol, and I was like, that next morning, I was like, oh, I feel good. Like the fever might have, I guess, broken. And then the first time you have something like that, you're like, man, that zaps your energy. And so it didn't finish well at state. So coming back on the track season, on the track side of things, it was nice to
redeem yourself.
Yeah, make a positive move into it. Also, that senior year of high school was my first attempt to run Dallas half marathon. So 2003, Dallas used to always have just a marathon and relays, but it was really just the marathon. And so 2003, they opened a half marathon. My dad turns to me and he said, do you want to run this? Your long runs are 14, 15, 16, 18. Do you want to just run it for fun? I was like, oh, sure, I'll go run it. And I got in trouble. I think I was out past curfew or something like that the night before the race, and just wasn't doing what I should be doing. So he's mad the next morning. And so I'm in bed. I've still got my like Abercrombie shirt on and my jeans on. I'm like sleeping, and he comes in the room. And hey, you got 45 minutes till we got to leave. You should get up and start moving around. I don't think I heard him the first time. The second time he comes in, he's, hey, you got 30 minutes. Like, you're going downtown to run a half marathon. Like, you should probably start moving. I know I heard him that time. I'm like, Dad, I'm okay. I don't think I should run today. I'm tired. And then he comes in 15 minutes later, and this is like the greatest life lesson. He grabs me by the foot, pulls me out of bed, and he says, I'm going to teach you a lesson. When you give somebody your word that you're going to do something and you're going to commit to it,
Love it.
you're going to do it. And we go downtown, get on my running clothes. I was so mad. Didn't listen to a single thing on the ride down. We just didn't talk to each other. We get to downtown, and we get to the parking lot, and he coaches me through. It's my first time running a half marathon, something this long, and coaches me through it a little bit. And anyways,
And he was running the marathon that day.
He was not running. He was just taking me down there to spectate, but he was going to stay at the start finish. Back then, the technology of the trackers and all that stuff wasn't nearly what it is today. And so I remember I started, and I was so mad. I was like, I'm going to take off, and I'm just going to run north back to Richardson. He's going to stay at home. He's not going to know where I'm at. And ended up getting out with the lead pack, and I'm building off this frustration, and ended up with the lead pack. And at the point where the marathoners and the half marathoners go, I'm like, shoot, I'm in second. Like, I need to either get serious. And so it's down Swiss at that point. So you did an out and back down Swiss, and I could see the guy, and I knew exactly where he was. And it was a guy that came down from Oklahoma and ended up turning on the afterburners. I think I ran 1:11, which is a very fast first half. But I won the Dallas for my first marathon. And again, it was like, oh man, like this is where I want to be when I win.
Yeah.
I want to win Dallas Marathon. This is what I want to do. And just the community and the people I met through that was great. And moved off. I went to Texas A&M, and I ran there. I did it takes a lot of learning. When you go from being good in high school and then you go to college, there's a big difference between 18 and 22.
A lot of people are faster than you, sure.
A lot of people are just great athletes. I mean, and I think the hard part is like you go from being in high school and workout being a workout to a workout being an actual race. And so you're racing everybody every day of every week. And I struggled a little bit with the college at the beginning, and the coach and I butted heads a little bit. And so I went over winter break, and I went back to what really worked for me, which was Terry Jessup's training program. And so over winter break, I took his training plan and brought it with me, and that base that I built with it. And I was able, really the only thing I did that was exceptional at A&M was my freshman year, I went to pin relays. I ran a 29:41 on the track, 10K. And at that time, I don't know, remember exactly, but I think it was the fourth fastest time at Texas A&M.
It's really fast. So now they're running 26s and whatever, but still.
It is getting a lot faster nowadays. We really poured a lot into running. And that 29:41 was really the only thing I did that was good. I just struggled through the rest of college. I had some hard difficulties with some relationships, just with friendships and some relationship stuff. And
life got in the way a little bit. That's the way
and it happens. And just sometimes it takes a little bit of time to dig out of it. Really, gosh, I was second to last at nationals one year. Just really this trajectory you think it should be just linear, just went boom. And I hit kind of rock bottom through most of college. Struggled a little bit with the hard stuff, and again had that surgery, and that probably had a little bit to do with it.
When did you have that surgery? Was it like junior, sophomore, what?
The surgery was in 2005. Okay. I remember September of 2005. In fact, I remember laying in the hospital bed, and it was right when Hurricane Katrina was. So it's just a quick surgery, and it's a day procedure. You get in the morning, they go in there and ablate the area, and then you're out of the hospital that night. But I think there are a lot of people that end up having that just get a little bit worried about trying to get their heart rate up too high. They have a little fear of it. And some of my peers and coaches had thought that might have been just that, and I wasn't in a good headspace through most of college. And so
you're figuring out life. So
college is not a bad place to figure out life, but it's
you know what I mean. Like things happen, right? You get in relationships, or maybe you're not doing as well in school as you want. It all messes with your head, And if
It
it starts
does.
messing with your head and running, because you're a very good athlete, it's going to mess with it.
And I have a lot of good people in life that really helped walk me through there. And but yeah, after A&M, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I had a great chiropractor that was at Texas A&M. We brought
Hmm.
in, he did dry needling, he did active release technique, he did the adjustments, and I was like, I like what this guy does. He takes
Yeah.
his time with you. He evaluates you. He does muscle work. He explains everything. I was like, this is the type of chiropractic I think. If this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do. And so I would shadow him. I shadowed him for my last few years before I was like, hey, when
Well,
I leave A&M, I'm gonna go to chiropractic school back in Dallas. And after A&M, I worked for a little bit at some of the running stores through the area. I worked at Luke's. I worked at Run On pretty
yeah.
much all the way through high school and in college, but particularly in that time. And I took some of the classes I needed to be able to do to get into chiropractic school. And just trying to think when, I think 2009, I started at Parker University Chiropractic School. And at this moment of my life, I had gotten back into road racing. And
Mm.
Terry Jessup and I would meet again, and we would talk, and we would draw up plans. And through this whole time, I had always just come back in the winters and run Dallas Marathon. And I would come
Mm.
back in February and I'd run Cowtown Marathon. And at that moment, had actually won Cowtown half, and I had come back. I think Cowtown half was the only thing I'd won at that particular time. But Cowtown was expanding. Dallas obviously was expanding in the races, and so I really started to work towards that mission of, hey, I want to win Dallas.
Yeah.
And so through chiropractic school, I put a lot of that focus into it, and did my first marathon in 2010, which was Dallas Marathon. And back then, there used to be a prize purse. There used to
Yeah.
be Kenyans that were flown
Elites and
in.
all
And
that.
so I ran, my timeline's all mixed up, but I think I ended up fifth, but I was second to Keith Pierce, who was the first American. He and I
Wow.
ran together the whole time. And about halfway through, I turned to Keith. I'm like, man, this is easy. You and I are just hanging out. Like, I'm going to go, man. I feel good. And Keith's, all right, man. And
He passes you
I
later.
go around the lake, and I'm running normal good clip, and we start hitting the Winstead Hill on the back end. I'm like, man,
Hmm.
my calf just, and so I'm stopping and walking and running, stopping, walking and running, and probably a mile. We were close to downtown. We were on the
Walking.
fringe of downtown, and Keith runs by me just at a normal clip, and I think I ran 221 high that year, and Keith was right around 221 low, 220. And
But still, I
so
mean, you're right there.
for a first marathon, and just a lot to learn, but you just take your punches where you get it. But,
It's a great marathon time for your first.
and I've chased it ever since.
That's funny.
Naive is just great. It's,
Yeah,
not knowing what you're
that's
going to
right.
get yourself into is almost a strategy in and of itself. After that, I was like, pretty quickly, I was like, oh man, I'm going to run over and do Fort Worth.
Yeah,
I'd like to see
Cowtown.
what I got. I feel fit. I want to see if I can run faster. And so I went over to Fort Worth to Cowtown, and ended up, fortunately, I was able to win the full there.
It's one of my
You
favorite
know,
races. I love Dallas, but Fort Worth, Cowtown is one of my favorite. I've done that like 10, I've done the half. I don't do fulls too much, but yeah, it's a great race.
Heidi has done a phenomenal job. Heidi, the race director there, has really built up that race. I took a little bit of a hiatus after I got married
Mm.
and won the 50K there because my birthday and our anniversary is right around the same time. But I went back last year, and she's done such a great job at course activation, getting
Yeah,
these areas of the course. Fort Worth has a really good, they bring the community out. They have a really good feel to it. And they basically branded the feel, which is that kind of country Fort Worth, howdy y'all type
yeah,
feel.
they
And
do.
they've embraced that. They've done an
You go
excellent
into
job with
downtown
it.
and you smell the cows and everything else, and so
Run through the stockyards,
yeah,
and it's TCU, the golf course. It's great. I
yeah.
think they've done a phenomenal job out there. At that same Dallas Marathon, though, I met Marcus Greenwald, who's the
Hmm.
executive director of Dallas Marathon. And fortunately, as chairman of the marathon now, I'm able to work really closely with him. Man, the guy is just a genius. He's got over 20 years of experience, and I've never seen somebody so calm, cool, and collected
He
under
is.
pressure. I think before that first marathon, you used to have the tag that you'd put on the shoe, and
Yeah, yeah.
I laid out all my stuff, but I left the tag at home, and I
Oh
go to
no,
Marcus, and I'm like, "Hey man, like I'm freaking out." Marcus, dude, man,
it's okay.
the race is in 5 minutes. You're gonna be fine. I'm like, all right, Marcus, I'm freaking out, man.
Yeah, he's great.
But
So Let's go back to, because I definitely want to get to where you are today from a Dallas Marathon standpoint, but you run Dallas Marathon, and that was one of your big goals to win it. So tell me about that in 2015.
Yeah, 2015. It's funny.
By
I
the way, you
don't
have this
ever.
great photo of holding your hands up and just being like, it was awesome. Like,
Yeah.
anyways.
It's really, it hits a deep tone now that those most of those days are behind me. I've put in years and years of 100 plus miles a week, and I've always wanted to be a father. I'm forever grateful that I've got two beautiful little girls. Like
Yeah.
I miss racing, but I wanted to be a father, and so I'm
Yeah.
happy I was able to hang it up and get that behind me and contribute in other ways. But yeah, 2015 was epic. Went out there. I can't believe I'm forgetting. It was a great race. He ended up dropping out. I'm blanking on Ed Swiatoka's son, Jonathan Swiatoka, and I were streamlined to be head and head on this battle. And like I had told you before, for about 16 years I'd wanted to win Dallas, and I knew that there was a really good opportunity in my fitness on that year and everything coming about. I had just left a practice that I was working at and dealt with a little bit of a turmoil with that. I was starting my practice, and so I was in the mix of all this chaos, which kind of goes back to some of the other races I had. And to be able to focus in and have one thing in front of you that you wanted, it was just nice because I think I just threw the blinders on, didn't focus on pain. I just knew, hey, I wanted this. I've got so much other stuff going on, and went out there, and it turned out to be a great race. 2:27. It's not my fastest
Yeah.
time. At that time, it was probably one of the slower Dallas marathons. So for
Yeah.
somebody to win, but I felt a huge sense of pride in crossing that, a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. And I love what it's done. The community in at large has embraced these local winners, and you've got people running around White Rock Lake and Katy Trail,
Yeah.
and you can see somebody, Joseph Hale, who's won it twice. You could see a Keith Pierce. All these phenomenal people that are embedded in our community are here instead of
Yeah.
somebody that's just coming to get a check or something like that. And so I think that's one thing we've done. And I don't want to say me. I wasn't on the board. I wasn't on that committee. But I think it's really great. These people that can be local heroes for some of our younger athletes, which
Yeah.
is exactly what I had growing up here. I had gotten to know Ernesto, Dr. William Moore, who's my daughter's pediatrician, all these people that are local heroes to me. Back in the day when it was probably a little, Ed Swiatoka, back in the day when it was a little tougher to win, but it's pretty cool, and we've really embraced that with trying to support everybody here.
No, it's look, the running community is booming here in Dallas, Dallas Fort Worth area, and so I appreciate you telling that story. Now, you do come back in 2016 and you got second place. And I saw this video and you were just like looked like excited because maybe knew it was I don't know, like this one guy beat you looked like and then I don't know what happened there, like you looked excited at the end. Or
Funny thing is, so that was Keith Pierce. So my
yeah,
very first marathon, Keith Pierce beat me. We ran the whole 13 miles on that first marathon together, and I was like, oh, I got this. And he came
that's
back
right,
with
yeah.
his wisdom. And so in 16, I remember they treated me super well. I got to go out with the lineup with the elites up front. And I remember going and getting behind the start line when they start pushing the elites back to make sure they don't cross the line. I look back, I'm like, Keith Pierce, man, he hasn't raced in a while. Like,
Yeah,
I haven't heard of him in a while. I knew he had triplets. Like, what's going on? And
he was
so
busy.
shake his hand. I talked to him. We chat for a little bit. I didn't ask him what he was running. I didn't know if he was out there for fun or the half or the relay. And so
You didn't know you were competing against him.
I had no idea. And so, in
Wow.
Dallas, the unique situation that we have with the beginning is you have
Yeah,
your half marathoners, you have your
that's right.
marathoners, you have your ultra marathoners, and you have your relay people. And so everybody is starting at the same time. And you really have to have your head on a swivel to know who is in the lead and who is in which group. Because if you're a
Yeah,
marathoner, you don't want to go out with those half marathoners. You
no.
want to let them go, and
Yeah.
you just need to make sure. And
It's
so
a different level when thinking of kind of that being that fast.
you get a lot of that upfront vision. You're able
Yeah.
to see what's going on, which is great. But you got to get in front of somebody to see their bib. And Keith had actually snuck out, and so Jonathan Swiatoka and I were running close to close. We were running neck to neck through most of it, and probably right when we got into Lakewood, M Street area, I've started to take off a little bit. And I'm like, oh man, I'm in the lead. This is great. And I probably we got to the lake, which was probably mile 13 or 14. And I had a friend who turned to me and he was like, hey, you're doing great. You're in second. What are you talking about, man? No way. Like, I don't know where the lead cyclist is, but I don't think I'm in second. And so I get a little further up and I see my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad, am I in second? He said, no, you're in first.
Oh
Oh,
no.
I'm getting bad information. Sure enough, we get a little further out and somebody says, hey, you're in second. He's got a minute and a half on you. Oh, shoot, man, I'm at mile 15. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of ground to
That's,
make up. And so you go from being on a high to being like, I got to book it. And
yeah.
so changing gears in a marathon when you're running, this
Especially
was
at
right
15 or
about that.
16.
Yeah, you're going at a pretty quick clip. And so I dropped the gear down a little bit and started catching up time and catching up
Hmm.
time. And by the time we got to Swiss, which was probably about 4 or 5 miles out from the finish at that time, 21, 22, somebody's like, hey, you're doing great. You closed the gap. You're at 30 seconds. I was like, I don't know if I can do another 30 seconds in 5 miles.
30 seconds seems like pretty tough because he's not really slowing down, it sounds
He will admit that if the race was probably another half mile, he probably
like. Hmm.
would have had a lot of toughness. And
Yeah.
so I think it ended up being about 20 or
Oh,
25 seconds. And he just ran a smart race. And Keith is just a genius. And he came back the next year. He won it again. And it's
oh,
one of those things I really wanted. Your goal is to win, which was 2015. But I really wanted to win twice. And
yeah,
if I won twice,
of
I probably
course.
would have been like, hey, I want to win 3 times. Like,
Exactly.
it was a great kick in the butt to be like, hey, like, you did your thing. And I got man, I was emotional. I teared up and they had brought me up on TV to talk about what Dallas meant to me and how much it meant to see Keith, and Keith being a father of triplets and what he did. And I'm so proud of him, but I was also like, I wanted it. And I just I don't know why, but I was like, hey, I want to be on the board of Dallas Marathon. I want to spread this and I want to be able
That
to
was my
kind of
next
help the
question.
community.
Look, I love how you just go in it. Go ahead.
I just, I was just verbal comment. I just basically was like, I want to do the next thing that I can do with this race. Like, I won. I'm very content there. I'm very content on
Yeah.
running. I want to do the next thing. And Jerry Rosansky, he's been on the board for a while. He was actually about to be chairman. He reached out to me and said, hey, Logan, are you serious? Do you want to be on a board? I was like, yeah,
Wow.
I want to be on the board. And so I went through a couple of rounds of interviews and got everything ready. And I got brought on the board that 2017. And man, I just stepped in that room and all these board directors, you have so many people that I've gotten introduced to over the years from my
Yeah.
father. And so you have a Chuck Danis. Chuck Danis used to run the Danis Racing Series, which was a huge running series. He probably had 10 or 12 races throughout the year. And
Wow.
depending on how you placed, at the end of the year, he'd tally you up in your age group and you get a special medal. And so he was a really great person. Gosh, I don't want to leave out any names, but you have Reva Rawl, Dr. Rawl, who's won Dallas Marathon. She's in the room. I'm trying to think who else at the time. I don't want to leave off any names because they're all so important. But man, I just was in this room with deer in headlights. I wanted everybody's autograph. I was like, man, this is so cool.
That's great.
And it taught me a lot. I had been on the student body at Parker University, and I got to learn a lot about working with organizations and working with politics. But being involved with Dallas, especially like the belief they have shown the board, I've got to be. I would venture to say one of the youngest people to take over this chairman role, and the trajectory they made me from 2017 to now 2024. I've had a lot of great mentors, Jerry Rosansky, Lisa Nelson. I have to thank Hawkeye, Mark, the radio guy off of 96.3. He really led us through, he's still part of DRC, but
Yep.
he led us through 2020 and 2021 and was really great for me to see how he works things. And then Charles Payton, who I was vice president for. And each of these people have a unique perspective in how they are able to handle a situation and really bring out everybody and make the board, make the marathon a greater place. And I remember asking one of my mentors, Bob Hancock, who's a board member, he was chairman, he was race director. Was he race director at the time? That might have been Steve. But I was like, hey man, like, what is it? what does it take to be a successful chairman? I don't know what's going on here. And he was like, I just like, just the natural word of wisdom is don't be the smartest person in the room. And I was like, shoot, I don't even have to pretend that.
It's easy.
We're good there. I got all these smart
I think
people
you have to
like
be
it.
humble, right? Is what I heard him say, or hear him say in there.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, we have so many unique perspectives. We have so many unique people that have strengths in certain categories, and we're able to really build off of that, which is great. And I think it's been a lot of fun, and it's been a lot of fun to really represent something that to me has always meant a lot. And I want the community to see really what this is. We are the biggest health and fitness event in Dallas. We're inclusive. You can come join us. You have
It's
a
pretty
great
amazing.
health and fitness expo. And not only that, we give. Our primary beneficiary is Scottish for Children. And a lot of this, I'm very thankful to Bob Walker. I hate calling him Bob Walker. I like calling him Mr. Walker, but he doesn't like that. But the CEO of Scottish Rite Hospital,
Yeah.
Scottish for Children. We're very lucky in life to meet people who, without saying a word, without really having to do anything, just make you feel like you are the most important person in the room, and that they believe in you, and that they know and they see what success you'll have. And Bob has just been, Mr. Walker, has always just been a phenomenal person in my life. And to be a part of this organization that represents Scottish Rite and what the work is that they do at the hospital. And I've got children. It provides me a lot of,
Yep.
it gives me the warm fuzzies knowing that this is in our backyard. I've got patients who it's like, hey, but you're under 18. You got to go to Scottish Rite. Let's see what they think over there. It's really it's a blessing that we have this here in our backyard, and that we're affiliated with it as a marathon.
No, I think it's pretty awesome. And then looking back in the 1970s, I think Tal Morrison started the marathon, and maybe there was a few hundred people. Now we have 30,000 people last year overall with the 5K, 10K, half, and full. Think about that. And you guys are doing a lot of different stuff throughout the year to continue keep the momentum kind of going. It's what the team has done over the years, and then bringing in people like yourself and Marcus and a bunch of other people is pretty cool. I love this running community, and I'm starting to love Dallas Marathon more and more all the time.
I have to give, as you said, a huge shout out to the team. Jason Schuhart is our president, and this is his first year, and I think he has done a phenomenal job. I've really enjoyed working with him. I've enjoyed growing with him. Marcus Greenwald, 20 plus years of experience. We brought in Haley and we brought in Patty. Haley's in charge of our marketing. Patty's in charge of our community relations. And this team, I have not been a part of many teams in my life.
And only
where
four
people. Are
people.
just 4 people. And that's up. We were 3 people for a few years there. So for 30,000 people, that's a 30 plus thousand people. That's a big thing to note, that we are working, and we've got a great group of people that we work with in Southwest. There's just so many different companies that we're working with to make this a great, safe event.
You guys are doing a great job. And Logan, thank you so much for coming on DFW Running Talk. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel. Please don't forget to rate and review us. Thanks again, Logan.
Yes, thank you.
All right.